Good morning, good morning. So today we're going to be talking about writing a system of inequalities based on a graph that's been given to us. Again, a system of inequalities is when we have two lines that are on a graph that are shaded above or below the line. That being said, I do have two lines here. I've got this red line that I've got going from the top left to the bottom right, and also this blue line that I've got going from the top right, more down, but still going over to the left. And I've got some shading stuff here. As I look really closely at this, I know that I need to find the inequalities for both of these lines as well as the shading. And so we're going to go ahead and get started on how to do that. It doesn't matter which line you pick first. The actual important part is that you pick a y-intercept. It doesn't matter which one. Just because I feel like it, I'm going to go ahead and choose this y-intercept here that is the 3. That 3 is important to me because it goes into my equation later on. Second, my goal is to find the slope. The slope, again, is going to be rise over run. So from this point here that I've got, I go down 1, over to the right 2. My rise being down 1 means that it is a negative 1. Over to the right 2 means that it is 2. So my slope is negative 1/2. Okay. Last but not least, I need to choose the sign, which means I need to go into a little bit more detail on what the shading looks like, as well as the symbol of the line. Like, not the symbol, but like the style of the line. This means we're looking for like dashed lines, dotted lines, or the solid line. And in this case, when I see it's solid, I know that we're going to be using the or equal to part of this. Sorry, let me get that off. There we go. We're going to be using the or equal to part of this. We just need to know if this is going to be a greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. And that goes back to how the shading is. We are shading below that line. That means that we are going to be a less than or equal to on this inequality here. Fourth, we're going to write this in slope intercept form. Slope intercept. The slope intercept form is where it looks like y equals mx plus b, but we're going to substitute some of the stuff in. Like, for example, I'm going to take my 3, that's my y-intercept, I'm going to put it in over b, because the b in this stands for the y-intercept. It's like where the chart begins, where the graph actually begins. And since it is a plus 3, it's a positive 3, it's where the plus 3 comes in here. From there, I'm going to care really strongly about my negative 1/2. That negative 1/2 being my slope, I look over here and that corresponds to my m. So instead of it being y equals just mx plus b, I go, oh, my slope was negative 1/2. That's what goes there. Last but not least, I do care about this sign. That sign goes here where this equals is. That equals happens only if they are equal to each other. Once we look at this and say, okay, it is not equal to, it is less than or equal to, this is going to be the equation. Not the equation, the inequality that we're going to want to put in. I'm going to recopy this y. It's less than negative 1/2 x plus 3n, because that is my first inequality. I'm going to do the same thing for this second inequality here. I'm going to get my new slope, my new y-intercept, my new sign, all that kind of stuff here. All right, I'm going to say, let's start by looking for that y-intercept first and see what happens. Because this is blue, I'm going to choose the dark blue. I'm going to talk about it crossing the y-axis all the way down here at the bottom at negative 4. That's my y-intercept here, is that negative 4. Then I'm looking for my slope. And again, when I'm looking for slope, it is rise over run. So let's talk about how many it rises. 1, 2, 3 over 1. I chose this point here because it is another pretty point where it goes through the corner of 4 squares simultaneously. If I'm rising 3 and running 1, that is 3 over 1, which reduces to just 3. In this case, it is a positive slope because up and also right, they're both positive changes. Last but not least, I want to talk about the sign. The sign again here is going to be if we're shading above or below, as well as if the line is dotted or dashed. Again, this line is going to be solid, so I know that it is or equal to. And then I'm going to be looking at if we're shading above or below. And in this case, we're shading below. Once again, I go back to my y equals mx plus b formula, and I start filling this stuff in, where the -4 is the slope. Oh, by the way, since this is a -4, that plus sign conveniently changes into a minus sign. And so it is going to be not mx plus 4, but mx minus 4. Again, m is going to stand for our slope. Our slope here was that 3/1 that we had talked about earlier today. So I take that slope and I substitute it in for that x, and I go, okay, the slope is 3, and it is positive. And last but not least, I go back and I check the sign. The sign is going to be this symbol right here, that is the less than or equal to. I get rid of the equal sign, and I put the less than or equal to symbol instead. And that is the equation that I'm going to write in over here. You'll see me copy exactly as it is, y being less than or equal to 3x minus 4. These are the two inequalities that this situation represents. The same thing happens when we go to the next picture on these notes. It looks a little bit different, but it is still the same. We're still going to look for our y-intercept. And this is a little bit bulky. Let me make that a little bit smaller for us real quick, because otherwise I'm going to end up not being able to see, which is no bueno. So the y-intercept is what we're looking for first. And again, I get to choose which one of these lines. Now here's the deal. I only see one color here, and that color is purple. But just like before, when I'm doing this, if I want to make purple, I can take blue and I can take red. And when I put them together, it doesn't work very well with that. Let's try this again. Better, I guess. Whatever, you get the idea that red and blue together make purple, okay? These are still two lines. And again, it doesn't matter which one is which. I still look and go, okay, if I look at this first y-intercept here, it is at +2. That's this one right there. That +2 is going to be for my first equation. And since it's positive, it's a plus. And I know that there's going to be an x plus 2, so I can put the x there. I'm kind of writing this equation backwards, aren't I? No big deal. We can still do this even if it is backwards. My slope going down 1, 2, right 1 is going to be -2/1, which reduces to just -2. So I put a -2 in front of that x, where my slope goes. Oh, by the way, the third thing I want to talk about is going to be the symbol that we're going to use. Okay, so when we talk about that symbol, we're talking about if we're shading above or below, as well as if the line is dotted or dashed. It's dashed, so it's either greater than or less than. Not equal to, though. Not equal to. So let's go ahead and take a close look at this shading then and see what happens next to know if we're going above or below. Again, this symbol right here is if we're shading above the line. This one right here is going to be if we're shading below the line. And when I look at this line here, I'm seeing that the shading is underneath it. So I know that it is below, which means this is going to be where y is less than. That means I'm going to draw it where my symbol points off to the left. I'm going to put a y in front of it. And this is the equation where y is less than -2x plus 2. I can do the same thing with the second equation, the one that's on the bottom, the second line, which is down here at -2. Again, that -2 being my y-intercept is going to go after the x. That x does not change. From there, I need to go back and find my slope. One more time, I go, okay, how do I get here? Well, if I go down 2/1 to the right, down 2 is a -2/1 is going to be, well, 1. -2/1 reduces to -2. Those look pretty similar to each other, actually, and that's fine that they look similar to each other, because notice the difference here is going to be that plus and minus. they are different to each other. And not just that, but take a look at which symbol we're going to be using. I know that it's still a dotted line, which means it's still going to be either greater than or less than. And when I look at where this shading is from this line right here, all this stuff is shading above it. So when I shade above this like that, it is going to be my greater than symbol here. That means y is greater than negative 2x minus 2 based on this graph. Yes, those lines are parallel to each other. We did talk about how to find parallel and perpendicular lines a few weeks ago. I am going to review that with y'all when I see y'all on Monday. But in this case, since we're shading in between those, this is going to be the system of equations. These two things will be the answers that I'm looking for. And on your worksheet, you're going to have two equations set up just like this. They're going to describe the shading that's on there. Otherwise, that's about